Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Well, Mayor, I don't have much advice. I lost an election once, Humpty Dump, years ago, and I was reeling from it, and about 2 months later I ran into an 8-year-old girl who looked at me and said, "Didn't you used to be Bill Clinton?" So I bet nobody will say that to you. Thank you for having me here today. Mayor Palmer, thank you for your leadership here and in Trenton. Mayor Diaz, thank you for hosting us and being the first green mayor of Miami and wearing your green tie. I just was meeting with Mayor Miller of Toronto, who I know has already addressed you, and is the chairman of the C40, the big cities that we work with in my foundation on climate change. And he was saying that the mayor told him not to wear a tie, that nobody would be wearing one. And then he said that the mayor had worn a tie every minute of every day. And that means he's a good politician. He wants to look a little higher class than the rest of us. I want to thank all the mayors on the platform and Congressman Fattah for being here. And I want to thank Tom Cochran and the staff here. They were wonderful to work with when I was in the White House, and I know that they're still working hard for you. Since I last met with the mayors in Chicago, as a volunteer, I have been to more than 400 American communities, large, small, and in between. And I never cease to be amazed by how diverse they are, but they all have one thing in common. They've all got a mayor who is responsible for performance, for making real changes in people's lives and helping them to make the most of it. And I know that you have a lot of problems today. I made a few notes, and now that I'm not in office anymore, I make my own notes, and I can hardly read my writing, so you have to let me wear my glasses. But I'd like to say just a few words about the setting in which we meet and the obstacles that you face. We have just been through a period where we're in the 7th year of a nominal economic expansion, but median family income is $1,000 lower today than it was the day I left office. This has never happened before since we've been keeping such statistics. It is in part because the American economy has produced only 5 million new jobs. And it is complicated by the fact that after housing represented 40% of our economic growth in the first 5 years of this decade, it has gone in the direction that you're all too familiar with, collapsing the only savings that millions and millions and millions of American families have. You have to deal with that, and the fact that the costs of your constituents for health care, for energy, for food, for transportation have gone through the roof, and so have your costs, while many of you are facing declining revenues. Crime is on the rise again. You have unmet infrastructure needs, and somebody's got to figure out what to do about this housing mess. In my opinion, it goes beyond what has been offered so far at the national level. I am well aware that this is an election year, and therefore most of the focus is going to be on the need for national leadership that reestablishes a real partnership with the cities. I was delighted to read that Senator Obama, in his remarks to you, said that he would reinstitute the COPS program, which I believe in and which I think is very important. And be more aggressive on infrastructure and on an economic partnership with the cities. I want to talk today, if I might, about the life I lead now. You all, if anything I'd say to you about politics, I'd be mostly preaching to the saved. But I want to talk about 3 things that my foundation works on that we can do together to help you deal with some of these problems now while you are awaiting what you hope will be different national policy and a turn in the economy. First of all, and far more important, I think, at this moment, it has been my great honor to work with the C40 group, the large cities around the world, many other American cities and colleges and universities, on the problem of global warming and climate change and its impact on energy prices. I do not believe we can bring the American economy back with $135 oil and $160 coal unless we all have a serious commitment to maximum energy efficiency, to maximum production of clean energy, to maximum commitment to building efficiencies. I just don't think we can do it. I think if we do it right, it will be the major engine of growth and new jobs in America for at least a decade. And therefore, I think we all have something to do here. And I'd like to talk about that, and then I'd like to speak just for a couple of minutes about two other projects that I care a lot about that I think affect an enormous number of the constituents that you have. The first is getting access to normal financial services for the 28 million Americans who get a paycheck every 2 weeks and don't have a bank account. And the second is doing more in a more aggressive way to deal with the problem of childhood obesity and the attendant health care costs and problems that it is causing. But let me begin by just saying what I think is self-evident, that in November we kicked off a new partnership between this conference and our climate change initiative. Many of you were there. We began this project in 2006 with a focus on urban centers because while cities account for 2% of the world's land mass, they contribute more than 2/3 of the greenhouse gas emissions. And by 2030, it is predicted that more than 60% of all people on Earth will be living in cities. It is estimated that the world's population will grow from 6.5 to 9 billion by 2050, the exact same time frame in which the climate scientists tell us we have to reduce greenhouse gas emissions by 80%. Now, since these people are going to be living in cities, that means that you will be at the forefront in the struggle to determine what kind of world our grandchildren will live in and whether it will be habitable. I do not believe we have any chance of doing what needs to be done here, and there are a lot of you who have been exceedingly active in this whole area. And Mayor Nichols, I particularly appreciate the fact that you tried to sign up as many Republican and Democratic mayors as you could to see that America would meet the Kyoto targets, whatever our government did. But I don't believe we can get this job done if we go around acting like Chicken Little and treating this like a castor oil that we have to swallow. We may have to swallow some castor oil along the way to save the planet, but free people never deal with a long-term problem based on the threat of destruction. They got too many problems in the short run, paying their bills, holding on to their job, trying to figure out what to do about health care. We have to create this as the greatest single opportunity for economic mobilization and prosperity this country has had since World War II. So, as I said, the mayor of Toronto is here, and he is part of the other major urban partnership I have with 40 big cities on 6 continents around the world, including several here in the United States. But I want to talk about how we got into this. I have become obsessed in my post-presidential life with the fact that the world is full of people with good intentions that cannot figure out how to turn them into concrete changes in other people's lives. And usually it's because we're organized for yesterday instead of tomorrow. You got a great example of what needs to be done. I understand when the mayor of Austin explained what they did with utility energy production earlier. But so I spend most of my time trying to figure out how to help people organize themselves to solve problems and save lives. And what we did with this energy building retrofit program was basically what we did when my foundation got into AIDS work. And I realized that there were 6 million people in the world who needed medicine in poor countries, and only 200,000 were getting it, and it was because the cheapest generic drugs were $500, because this was basically a low-volume, high-profit margin business for the companies that were producing the medicine, and because the infrastructure was not there to get the job done. So we basically changed the entire global marketplace for AIDS drugs to operate on a low margin, very high volume, absolutely certain payment business. And now we sell the world's least expensive high quality medicine, and 1.4 million more people are getting the medicine now. That's about half of all the people who have been added to the rolls of those getting medicine since 2004, simply by changing the system.